So welcome everybody to this, what I hope is going to be a really fascinating session around B Corps. We are recording, you'll probably have seen that, but just to let you know, we are recording. The idea being that we'll capture all of this brilliant insight and make it available on the website to people that aren't able to make it this afternoon, which is super. Those of you who don't know me, I'm the Development Director of Major Projects Association. Been here almost 20 years, don't look old enough. And if you've got any questions about the association, because I think some of you, it may be your first or second time at one of our events, if you've got any questions, let me know. When we get into the session, I'm going to ask people to turn off their cameras and mute unless you're speaking, just so that we don't have the distractions. I'm looking again at Al. We're okay to share the slides afterwards. Again, so yes. Sasha or Eleanor will be in touch with the slides so that you can see all of those. So you don't have to worry about frantically writing down some notes. So I'm going to invite the speakers for today to just say a few words about who they are, and then we'll crack on with the detailed content. So Al, can you just make a quick introduction?
Yes, thank you, Manon. Good afternoon, Al Simonite, Managing Director of the Advanced Consultancy, a B Corp Certified organisation, which you'll find out a little bit more on shortly.
Thanks, Al. Phil, you're the next one on my screen.
Yep, good afternoon all. Philip Bent. I'm part of Oakland. I'm one of our account leads and part of the leadership team, and we are also one of the B Corp certified companies here today.
Brilliant. Thanks, Phil. Dom.
Yeah, Dom Tritton. Nice to meet you all. I lead the TMT sector at Moorhouse, Director.
Brilliant. Thanks, Dom. And Ed.
Yeah, hi everyone. Ed Scott Dickens. I work at Moorhouse also. I'm a senior consultant. I work across the TMT sector and sustainability, and I also work on the internal responsible business team, where I lead the disclosures and certifications work stream.
Lovely. And do we have Nicole? I can't see.
Yeah, I'm here in place of Nicole.
Oh, okay. Apologies. Yeah. Smashing. Great. Okay. Well, I'm going to turn my camera off now, and we're going to hand over to Al, who's going to run the slides and give us an introduction. Thanks, Al.
Thank you, Manon. Just bear with me while I load up the PowerPoint. Hopefully that will come through as a PowerPoint live that everyone can see.
Yeah. Apologies. I should have said was, if you've got any questions, pop them in the chat, and we'll check them as we go, and either address them as they come up or at the end.
Yeah, thank you, Manon. I just have to remind me I didn't click the slider that said sound as well, because we've got some videos, so I need to do that. Yeah, please do contribute along the way in the chat, and Dom will be keeping an eye on that for us and coordinating our Q&A towards the end, which hopefully we will get plenty of time for at the end. So on behalf of those that you've just heard introduce, welcome to the session. When we spoke about this several months ago, as 3 organisations started having this conversation around projects with purpose, and you'll see the linkage to that title shortly. Advance, Oakland and Moorhouse have all, within the last couple of years, become B Corp certified. So we just felt within the membership it was worth having a conversation around what that actually meant. So what we're going to do is we're going to take you on a little bit of a journey. I'm going to start talking about what is B Corp, what does the standard mean, and then Phil's going to pick up from me and talk a bit more about why it's important in the general sense, and then the 3 of us are going to walk through with Ed leading from Moorhouse, Phil and myself picking up from our respective companies, what our individual B Corp journeys have been to get us to where we are now as certified companies, and what the future holds for us as we move forward. And then when we've done that, we'll then open up the floor for discussion, which Dom will coordinate and we'll chip in on, and then we'll finish off with a little bit of a close from Manon right at the end. So before I get going, I just wanted to show you a very short little video clip, which hopefully starts to set the scene for what B Corp is about, and hopefully I've selected it so that you can all hear. Okay, so that hopefully sets a little bit of context as to where we're going to take this conversation over the next hour or so. B Corp is a organisation that was formed in America in about 2015, I think. And as you would expect with sustainability, there's a lot of brands involved with B Corp that you'd recognise. You'll no doubt expect no surprise to hear that the likes of Patagonia and Ben & Jerry's are B Corp certified companies. But there are plenty of others out there that are also going through this process and joining on this journey. So the whole point about B Corp certification or B Corp itself is it's about purpose over profit. And I just wanted to show you another short video that just talks about how this is becoming now the idea of a movement that is gaining traction globally. Let me just share this video with you, and then I'll pick up a little bit more detail about what B Corp is and how it works before I hand over to Phil. And you'll see there that we're doing this as part of B Corp Month. Every year in March, B Corp encourages all of its certified companies to engage our networks, our clients, our communities in understanding what B Corp is about, which is one of the reasons why we wanted to pitch this event for the MPA membership at this point in the year. There are over 9,500 now. This number keeps increasing. B Corps around the world, as you see there, with a huge variety of backgrounds and industries in lots of countries. It was 2006, that the three founders in America picked up the idea of creating a standard for social and environmental performance. And in 2007, the first B Corp certified companies were named, looking across lots of different impact areas. And I think one of the things that's important about B Corp is it's not just about environment. As you'll see shortly when we just start describing the model itself, environment is only one of 5 impact areas. And I think that for those of us who have been through the journey, and we'll all share our individual stories shortly, the wider aspects of B Corp is one of the key things that really resonated with us as we went through our experience of starting the journey and also going through the certification and verification process. So, nearly 9,500 globally, 2,500 or getting on close to 2,500 of those are in the UK. So as a market, the UK is gaining a huge amount of traction within B Corp for something that started in America. That's about 150,000 people at the moment, rapidly increasing. It was 1,700 at the start of 2024. I don't know what the actual figure is today, but I don't think the B Corp website is keeping pace with the number of companies that are certified. But there is still a relatively small presence in the core major project sectors. If you go look at the B Lab website and look at the B Lab directory for UK companies, there are a number of themes that you would see there. Small companies, small retail, kind of artisan manufacturers, artisan retailers tend to be the predominant. One of the reasons that we wanted to have this conversation was to encourage the wider major projects community to see that it is possible, and there is value and benefit in going down this route if you're working in the major projects, the infrastructure and other sectors. So who are we talking about? Well, here's some of the logos, again, that you will recognise, and you would not be surprised, I suspect, by many of those on there. But you'll see there are a number of banks that are also B Corp certified. The Guardian newspaper, B Corp certified. The likes of Patagonia, Body Shop, Innocent, Ben & Jerry's, again, probably no surprise. But we are seeing different organisations and different sectors starting to get onto this join part of this movement. Chris Turner, who's the Executive Director for B Lab UK, says that what they're seeing is that B Corp companies are consistently proving that business is a force for good, thinking in the wider interests beyond just shareholders and beyond profit, to create this better future for all. And we're seeing as well that there is some stats, and I'll share a slide in a minute, where we can see that companies that are B Corp certified are generating better outcomes for their clients and for their workforce and for the environment. So to go through this process, we have had to demonstrate our performance and our ethics and our purpose in a number of different areas, and demonstrate that through independent verification. The idea of providing evidence, demonstrating accountability, and disclosing transparency to the public are three key principles behind B Corp. And for each of us that are B Corp certified, every year we have to produce an impact report, which is publicly available, that demonstrates what we've done to make sure we're following the impact areas of the B Corp certification standard. So, one of the other things that is important about B Corp is what we call the Declaration of Interdependence. And this is a general statement that all B Corp companies must buy into, to the extent that to be B Corp certified in the UK, we have to change our Articles of Association at Companies House, or make sure our Articles of Association at Companies House, not necessarily change, but we certainly did, to demonstrate that we exist as a business for purpose over profit. So I talked about the impact areas. Let's have a look at those. So there are 5 key areas that B Corp requires you to certify against. And I'll just talk briefly a little bit about the process. And I know Phil will build on that in terms of why it's important and what it means to businesses. But in general terms, B Corp certification follows an online self-assessment process. You have to be scoring a minimum 80 points to be validated. There is a whole range of questions that individual companies can respond to. Some of them not applicable to service industries like our 3 organisations. So if you're a manufacturer or retailer, then there's a whole series of things that you can respond to gain points, but a lot of those are quite difficult for service industries. So I would say that, before we're even starting, we're probably starting the B Corp process with about half of the points potentially available to a wider company, not available to us. And then for each of those 5 areas, we have to demonstrate our governance, so how we set the business up, how we're managing our ethics, including that Companies House validation, what are we doing for our workers, our staff? Have we got policies in place for volunteering, for parental leave, for inclusion and diversity? For community, what are we doing in terms of community support and social value? Clearly, the environment is absolutely important. So the usual expectations around waste, around carbon footprint, all get scored and verified. And certainly one of the things that we found, and I'll talk a bit more about this on the advanced story, is a lot of this is stuff that we knew we were doing, but perhaps hadn't actually written down. So one of the big challenges of certification is to actually validate the things that you're actually doing as a business. And then finally, customers is making sure that you're working in an ethical space. So there are a number of industries, and this is, again, perhaps one of the challenges of B Corp in the major project sector, a number of industries that will find it difficult to get B Corp certified. Defence, nuclear, for example, have their challenges. Not impossible, but it becomes more challenging for those types of sectors and those organisations. So I just want to finish off my section before I hand over to Phil with a brief look at what the benefits you can get out of it. And this is a list from the B Lab UK website, and I won't expect you to look at this in detail, but again, as Marilyn said, the slides will be available, and we'll provide some links to some of the material that we've used to support these presentations at the end. You can see that there is direct business benefit to be had out of being B Corp certified, and we've certainly found that the one immediate advantage we've seen internally is having that level of robust governance across our business that perhaps as an SME in the past we might not have achieved on our own. So I'm just going to leave you before handing over to Phil with a short quote from Chris Turner, again, the gentleman I mentioned earlier on, that just talks about what he sees the B movement, the B Lab movement being across the UK, and this idea that by considering the wider stakeholders and going beyond profit, we are actually generating those better outcomes across all of those impact areas, and really striving to show that we can be purposeful, ethical businesses. We can still return to our shareholders and to our owners, and we can still deliver for our clients, but we do so with a very clear mindset around those 5 areas. So that really hopefully gives you a sense of what B Corp is about, what the structure of the certification is about. And I'm just going to hand over to Phil now, who's going to talk a little bit more about why it's important.
Thanks, Al. Hopefully you can all hear me. Do shout if you can't. Lovely, thank you. So yeah, the importance of B Corp. It's almost been summed up already, but it's not just a standard, it's a movement. And if I reflect on our journey as Oakland, I was a little bit honestly skeptical of that to start off with. I've done a lot in other standards, and I do quite a lot in the same way as Ed does internally in that regard. But we started talking about this with our team, and you could just see it sort of get under the skin of everyone, and everyone wanted to contribute to support it. So there's a real sense of movement, and it's a standard that you can live and breathe as an organization, still focused, still delivering to clients in great ways, and making some money out of it. Let's face it, profits are important for everyone. Without profits, companies won't survive. But it's doing all the things that B Corp highlight around people and place alongside those profits is a key part of it. So it is not just a standard, it's a little bit more, and building together and working with other B Corps, and then providing that sort of influence from what they're trying to do on other companies where you can is something that is sort of very much underpinned around the B Corp ethic. It's also probably it's one of those standards as well. If you look at other standards, there are standards that look at environmental benchmarks and corporate social responsibility, but it's relatively unique in the fact that it's all under one roof, which is again quite a powerful thing around it. Al, can you pop into the next slide, please? So thinking around the 2 sort of main areas, the people and the planet, I'll just focus on the people bit a little bit more. B Corps are driven to bring benefit to all, not just the shareholders, but it's building it out to all stakeholders. And I am so happy that I've got those two the right way around, because every time I say stakeholders, I normally get it mixed up. That might happen later, so apologies already. When we do say stakeholders, you kind of automatically go to, well, that's going to be employees and customers, but it is wider than that. It is looking at your supply chain, but it's also the community that surrounds you as an organization. Maybe that's local to your offices, but it can be wider than that as well, who you can have influence with too, and who are influenced by as well. So it's quite a unique and important thing that brings to the party. As mentioned, that the whole point around being legally bound. Now, at times being a business is really challenging, and when things aren't booming, it is really challenging to think around those other stakeholders. But yeah, B Corps are legally bound to do that, and it provides that long-lasting legacy, so that when those heads of businesses depart and move on, they know that business has to continue doing that, ensure a legacy, continuing benefit for all. Yeah, it's that commitment to change that measure and the measure of success. That is quite important, where success was always measured as profit. This is wider than that now. It's bigger than that. It's around positive change as well as profit. Going a little bit further, there's other cornerstones of B Corp is the inclusive economic system that they promote. Then B Corps must demonstrate that commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusivity, not only within their own teams and businesses, but also through their supply chains as well. And they are there to help encourage that across broader businesses, to help promote that importance of DE&I. The other stakeholder I mentioned is the planet as well. Al, next slide, thank you. Obviously, for centuries, we as humans have had a huge impact on the world. Some of it really good, some of it not so good. Obviously, we are in a climate crisis. Some still don't believe it, which is quite interesting, shall we say? But businesses are that primary emitter of greenhouse gases, and so being a B Corp, it's that acknowledgement of that, to take action for the climate and mobilize all businesses they work with to do the same, to try and reach net zero as quickly as possible. And I think there's also that driver of net zero. Okay, we can offset things, but actually it's a driver to reduce the offsetting and actually reduce the carbon emissions from sort of the production of those carbon emissions from the word go. Yeah, as it says, there is no planet B, so we must continue to do all we can to make that business, to make the planet thrive. Next slide, please. So, sort of, in other words, there are some key differentiators that makes B Corp quite important. I think it is that holistic standard that does stand out against other standards. One sec. Always the way. It is that true commitment to be a force for good. Tied and underpinning to all of it is a legal accountability, which, granted, for SMEs could be potentially easier to achieve than for larger organizations. But if you have that commitment, it does drive an organization's behavior in an interesting and positive way. Focuses across all the stakeholders, as mentioned, not just the shareholders of a company. And the other key factor here is it is transparent. So every B Corp certified organization must publish their impact assessment, which is a rigorous performance standard. As Al said, for certain industries, it's quite hard. It's harder to achieve more points than others. I think there were between 170 and 200 quite testing questions to answer for us as a small consultancy, but for others there's more questions to go. It is rigorous and it is all verified, so publicizing that is a key point. And I guess the other side of this is that continuous evolution of B Corp. Since it was founded in 2006, the standards have grown and matured and developed. It factors in the global challenges that we all face. It listens to the community of B Corp and provides some updates to that. And actually, right now we're going through a change to those standards. So So Oakland certified 2 years ago, and we know, well, sorry, 2 years ago, we know we need to evolve to ensure we can still hit those benchmarks. So I've talked quite a lot about that, but probably it's better just to summarize that in the words of B Corp themselves. We've got another little short video, and I hope you can all hear it.
Thank you, Phil.
So you've heard a little bit. I've gone out. All yours.
Sorry, go for it. Finish off. Sorry.
Sorry, I was going to just say you've heard a little bit about B Corp is, around the importance of it, but it's best to bring it to life a little bit. And I was just going to say, time to hand over to Ed, who can talk a bit about the Moorhouse journey. Thank you.
Great. Thanks a lot, Phil. Yeah, next slide, please, Al. Great. Okay. So Moorhouse. Moorhouse is a management consultancy based in London with around 250 employees. We work across many different sectors, including infrastructure, transport, pharmaceutical, telco, and at those clients and in those sectors, we deliver across 6 main service line capabilities. That includes kind of data, digital, sustainability, people and change, culture. So we do lots of different things. But as you can see there, we've won quite a few awards, and we're proud to be not just B Corp certified, but also rated platinum at EcoVadis and recognized by our employees as being a great place to work. Next slide, please. Thank you. So Moorhouse took the decision to become a B Corp to differentiate ourselves in the market, to better engage with our employees, and to demonstrate that we live our values and kind of practice what we preach. So on this slide, I'll take you through some of the key stages in our journey, from the benchmarking through to kind of maximizing the impact of our certification. The first step we took was to perform a gap analysis of our current performance against the B Corp standard. And this was actually a really useful exercise and acted as a kind of a maturity assessment, providing us an understanding of kind of where we were performing well and where we could focus on to improve our performance. So through that gap analysis and maturity assessment, we identified a series of priority actions that would not only increase our B Corp score, but also deliver benefit to Moorhouse and ultimately to our clients. So we created an action plan to track the closure of these gaps. And in 2023, we received our B Corp certification, scoring 94 points. But I'll come on to that in a minute. The second step we took was to work with stakeholders across Moorhouse to kind of gather the data and the evidence to support our submission. And the key learning from this step was really around the importance of engaging with these internal stakeholders, with the employees, with the different functional leads. We found it was important to explain why we were requesting this documentation and this information data, and how ultimately this is in their interests and how it will benefit the organisation. Also, from a kind of practical point of view, personally, I found that the B Corp platform was, quite user-friendly, with clear guidance and, very easy to navigate around. So, yeah, I wouldn't let the usability of the platform kind of worry you. It's actually set up very well. The third step, and a very important step, is around maximizing the value of being certified. So the first step that we took was to create an improvement plan, highlighting actions needed to close some of the gaps. And we have assigned owners and due dates, and we regularly check in with these action owners to understand how they're getting on, whether they need any additional support. And this is all focused around continuous improvement. So we know and we have confidence that this will put us in a great position for our recertification next year, and gives us confidence that we will hit our target score. The second part of this stage is around celebrating our success, and we've done that through a number of different mechanisms. But the key step we took was to publish our responsible business report, which is available to everyone on our website, and it's focused around the 5 B Corp pillars. So it shows our performance in these 5 areas. It shows our key achievements, and it also details our key areas that we're looking to improve going forward. So yeah, the first version of this report was published last year, and we're currently working on an updated version to publish very, very shortly. As part of that, we made sure that our achievements were shared internally, and that's really, we're hoping that's really driving engagement, and that will support us when we go to those internal stakeholders again for our resubmission next year, and mean that we've got an engaged group of people who are happy to help and willing to go that extra mile in terms of gathering the data and evidence to support our submission. Yeah, I think that's everything. But yeah, clearly B Corp is something we're very proud about, and it's something we reference a lot when bidding for new work. Okay, so this slide is just kind of detailing a little bit about our performance. So yeah, just to repeat myself, that we scored 97 points when we were certified in 2023, and that exceeds the threshold, the certification threshold of 80 points. We have our recertification scheduled next year, and we're targeting a score of 105. So yeah, through our improvement plan, we're fairly confident that we'll hit that. But as Phil was saying, the questionnaire does change, so we're keeping an active eye on that. Just to go around each of the different pillars very quickly. For environment there, or for each of the different pillars, I've listed our score, along with some kind of high level information on what we've done. So for environment, we're scoring 11.9, and we've had a real focus on trying to upskill our employees and the leadership team at Moorhouse to help educate them as to what the effects of climate change are on business and society, and that's been really successful. For governance, we scored 17.5 points, and our focus for the next certification or recert is to further recognise to get further recognition through additional certifications, and we've explored EcoVadis, and as I mentioned, we're proud to be platinum rated now. In workers, we've had a focus on providing opportunities for our workers and employees to be empowered and to ensure that everyone has equal opportunities. For customers, we've been working to deliver kind of upskilling and training and to further grow our sustainability consulting practice. And then finally, for community, we've really focused on volunteering and forming close charity partnerships with our employees, so they can really buy into and drive value. Great. I think that's everything from me. So if you could flip to the next slide, and I think I'll hand back to Phil.
Thank you, Ed. Yeah, I'll just go into a little bit of detail around Oakland's B Corp journey. So if you'd like to jump into the next slide, please, Al. Thank you. So first of all, just a little bit about Oakland. We are Leeds-based organisation. I'm one of the small outliers who are south of the country, as you can probably tell from my accent. Sorry about that. But we are a team of about 75 these days. We focus on data, so that is everything from data strategy, data governance, data platforms across the cloud, various providers. We are tech agnostic, data analytics and AI, and we serve a whole broad breadth of client industries, including some that were deemed high risk industries from a B Corp perspective, which was always quite interesting, and maybe we'll pick up a little bit more around that in Q&A. But to look at that, there's a disclosure questionnaire, and you have to demonstrate why you're doing things in that area. Well, sorry, you have to, as long as you're doing things that are helping improve those particular high risk industries, it's acceptable, which is good to a point, but we'll maybe pick that up at a later date. As I said, we're headquarters in Leeds in UK, Leeds, and we cover the UK and EMEA regions. Pop on to the next slide, please. Just to highlight a little bit, and I'm sorry about that slide build, I didn't realise that happened. I just wanted to highlight a little bit around our purpose and values. So as I said, everything data, but the really big thing I wanted to highlight here was our 5 core values that we have evolved, and it's sort of gone hand in glove with B Corp as well. That is what we do across everything we do in Oakland in terms of internal work as well as client work. But actually, I think as I alluded to before, people have really grasped and bought into the B Corp approach and drive things forward as well, from within the business as well. So it's really great to see, and I'll cover a few touch points on that as we go into it. But before we do that, I would be shocked if I didn't just give you another quick video of from our Nicola, our head of marketing, who put this together shortly after we achieved our certification. So Al, thank you very much. Thank you, Al, and no apologies. Our branding has since changed, but that's the way life goes. So our journey, let's just go into that a little bit more. So I joined the company in June 21, and Richard Corderoy, our MD, as well as the other 4 directors, were talking about Oakland and stood up and announced, right, this is something that is really something we really want to take part of, because we as a company know we are doing good stuff, but actually we need to get some third-party independence and verification of that so we can really shout about it in a little bit more. And B Corp looked as the absolute ideal standard to go for, and again, it is that movement as well. So it's quite empowering to be able to pick that up. I stupidly or otherwise volunteered for it, and at that particular time we were a company of only 27. We had some policies in place that covers the B Corp pillars, but nowhere near enough. And I think, as Al mentioned, we were certainly in that position where we were scoring probably around 40 points from the word go. We then, at the same time, underwent a bit of a transformative growth period. We tripled in size in 2 years, and that allowed us to then bring more people in to support what we're trying to do from a B Corp perspective, as well as come up with ideas to drive out into what we want to do across those pillars, i.e., community, workers, customers, for one, as well as a bit of a drive around how we operate to reduce our carbon footprints, and that all pulled together into our ability to then start scoring more across the impact areas of B Corp. And yeah, I think, as Ed said, the platform and the impact analysis that B Corp provide, that platform is very user friendly, which is very helpful. You can delegate it out and people can work towards it and work through. But it still was quite a big effort to get to. And I guess the key point here is not just sort of a tick box exercise. It is something that you will live and breathe as an organization, which is quite empowering. And so we started pulling things in, like we started doing a charity committee, we started doing match giving. So for every amount people would give to charities, the company would donate as well and match that level. I think ethics review was quite a big one. So we look at, before we commit to working with any client, we'll do a complete ethics review on them, what areas they work in, what sectors, what is their reputation, are they looking to do things to improve, etc. And there's quite a rigorous process in and around that, which was quite a change in the way we operated. Other things as well, we started promoting more greener ways to travel. We are a service sector, so probably our biggest carbon footprint is people traveling, commuting, and to and from the office, and also commuting to clients. But there's just a few of the areas that we started to build out, and we continue to do that going forward as well. So if you want to just jump to the next slide, Al, when we went through our assessment, we got through it, and we think we had a couple of points knocked off, which is absolutely fine. It's one of those verifications, validation type pieces that B Corp will do, like any standard. But we came out with a score of 90.5. So yeah, Moorhouse flying past. And generally, actually, it is quite really hard. You have to do a lot of work to keep building on those points. It's not about the points, it's about being B Corp, by the way. One point to highlight as well, I think, which is always quite interesting. If you look across the 5 impact areas on the left, you can see the white area. That is the areas that you can improve to hit full marks, as it were. But equally, on reflection within the platform, it'll give you a score against how you're performing against the other companies of your size and sector, and within the UK. And we found that we were actually doing all right. But we know there's plenty of room for growth as well. So there are lots of things we're doing as well as part of that. I mentioned Oakland sort of has taken it under the skin to be able to improve and grow from this, and we have now got D&I steering groups. We have a huge whole host of different forums. We look at families and careers. We have a big focus of well-being and mental health. We have suicide prevention chats. We talk about menopause and how that can impact people. we are introducing an ED scheme for large organisations. That's probably it's slightly easier. But and another thing we've got coming along in the pipeline is, instead of just invoicing a client for a bill, we will then highlight to them how much carbon our engagement has cost them, but also look at that against the value of what was and trying to estimate the value of carbon before our engagement, and then that value of carbon offset afterwards. And by the way, we'll then offset that our engagement of carbon as well, where we can. So there's plenty of more things to go, and I know we are currently going through that reassessment process as well, and gearing up for our formal assessment next year, and the same as Moorhouse. Probably a very quite fast skip through all of that, but that's probably it for me, and I'll hand over to Al. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil. So there'll be plenty of time. We're slightly ahead of our time curve, which is brilliant because it gives us more time to have an engaged discussion with those rest of you who've been listening patiently through this. Let me just then give you the final part of the jigsaw from the three of us, which is the advanced consultancy journey, our B Corp journey. We started a little bit behind the other two, so we're certified as of June last year. And we're quite a different organisation in some ways, because Ed talked about 250, Phil talked about 75, Advance is 6 people. We're a small associate consultancy with 6 core team members and about 15 associates. So we're of a different scale again. I think it'd be interesting to compare and contrast the different challenges that brought to us, as much as in some ways it made it easier, because as a group of 6, we could very much commit to this as a journey. Let me just take you on a very quick journey through Advance's history, and that hopefully give you a little bit of context as to why we started the B Corp conversation, probably in about December 2022, and I'll take you on a bit of a timeline for our B Corp itself. Business, this is very much, you'll see this on our website, this is a direct cut and paste from our website. The statement at the bottom half of the screen is our mission statement. And that hasn't changed as a result of B Corp. That was in place before we started on our B Corp journey, and recognising how we were aligning what was already our vision and purpose as a business to what B Corp was saying was one of the catalysts that put us on this journey in the first place. The top bit is very much again recognising that B Corp corporate commitment, which is again recognised now formally. Advance as a business has been going for over 30 years, started in the early 90s. As you'll see, our very first sector was oil and gas, which is not an area that would enamour B Corp these days. But we set off on the journey of understanding how collaboration works in complex project environments in the early 90s. As you see there, we worked through a number of different complex organisations, including some of the largest PFIs in the UK, worked a lot with highways. Then in the 2000s, we survived the financial crash, expanded internationally into Qatar in the early 2010s. And then the current management team, myself and my colleague Alexander, we arrived in sort of 2017, where we were very much in the throes of early stages of HS2 procurement and doing a lot of work with Network Rail at that time around collaborative procurement. In recent years, since just after COVID started, we've been heavily invested in Canada and doing about half of our business over in North America now. In 2020, we rebranded the business completely from what it was to what you see now. When you look at our website and our visuals, and as part of that, we started to look at what our future looked like. And we sort of targeted our future in 4 key areas: measured growth, to keep building the business to be successful, as it has been for the previous 30 years. To diversify the business into broader areas, recognising that the challenges of the UK market around big complex infrastructure, we only have to look at the news today to see how that's going, and recognising that sustainability was going to be a key part of that future journey. And in about December 2022, we started exploring B Corp. We did our first self-assessment, and we're quite pleasantly surprised to see that our first self-assessment put us in the sort of the mid-high 70s. So we thought, actually, we're not too far away from this. And when the average median of a UK company is 50 points, just to realise that even at that level, we're hitting the high 70s was really refreshing really motivated us to go formally onto the process. So we worked most of 2023 working through establishing the validity of the stuff that we were scoring ourselves against. And in October 2023, we had our first final draft submission, which put us at just over 90 points. So by working to verify and validate the stuff that we thought we were already doing and to make some small changes within our business, we've managed to add about 14 points to our draft score. So we submitted in December 2023 with a draft score of 92.5. And as Phil mentioned, we lost a few points along the way. And we ended up with a validated score in June last year of 88.5. And you'll see our breakdown of our scores there. And if you do look across the three companies and look at the balance of the scores in those 5 areas, they're pretty similar. There's some ups and downs, but generally the balance is very strong scoring in governance, workers and community. And that's the nature of the scoring matrix that B Corp employs. So again, we've set ourselves a target now for improvement. Of the 4 points we lost in our verification process, we know exactly why we lost them. And that was a lot to do with our supply chain. In our case, that's our associate model. And what we hadn't done was directly communicated to our associates through the commercial agreement that they have with us, the need to validate and follow through on the B Corp principles. That's a relatively simple change in our commercial agreements, and we hope that when we revalidate, we'll be able to get those scores back. But again, we're looking to drive performance in all 5 areas so that we drive this model of continuous improvement, which I think as a business is one of the areas I think is most important and embeds around the B Corp methodology and the B Corp mindset is this drive for continuous improvement in all of these 5 areas. So I often get asked the question when I talk about B Corp and our certification since June last year. One of the responses I often get is, "Oh, that must have been really challenging for you. Well done." And I feel a bit disingenuous sometimes in responding and saying, "Well, no, it wasn't really." There's no doubt the process itself is challenging, rigorous, and robust. But I think what we found was we were doing much of this stuff anyway. And what B Corp really gave us was a really clear framework that we can now use to communicate both within our business, to our associate teams and to our clients, that we've actually got this validated. And for me, the external verification and the holding to account that B Corp provides through the process is one of the most important parts of this. I think as well, if you start to look at the elements of the B Corp model, a couple of the others, Ed and Phil, have also mentioned this idea of localization. And I think that was equally important to us as well, to think about not just the what of the scoring, but the how and the why. So, for example, on environment, as you see in that previous slide, we certify a lot of our offsets through a company called Ecology, which is pretty well known. It's a global organization that uses gold standard offset projects globally to offset carbon. Now our carbon footprint isn't huge as a small service-based organization, but it does exist. But as part of our continuous improvement journey, one of the things that we're looking is to localize the offset into much more relevant and immediate projects. I saw, Phil, you talked about rewilding on the video, I think, for Oakland. We're very passionate about rewilding in the UK, so we're looking at transitioning our offsetting from Ecology global projects to something much more local and immediate to us. So what are we doing about that transparency and that generation of impact? Well, we on our website, you'll find, and if you could click on the link in the slides when you get them, you'll go to our B Corp page. For each of the 5 impact areas, we've declared what we call our manifesto pledges. And there are at least 3 in each of the 5 areas. And these are things that we've committed to publicly to do as part of our continuous improvement. And again, when it comes to writing our first impact report, which is looming very quickly for us in June this year, I can't believe that nearly a year has flown by since our certification. We will be addressing what we've done or even not done. And again, transparency is important here in achieving the things that we have and declaring the things we haven't against each of these 5 impact areas and the manifesto pledges that we've made to drive ourselves forward and to improve. So as have the others, talked about values. Again, we do believe that the 5 values that Advance has held since 1993 and have been consistent, through a number of challenges and reviews, do very much support the B Corp methodology and the B Corp mindset, and likewise the B Corp mindset supports the values and the operating model that we have as a business. And when we rebranded in 2022, we generated what we call the 8 pillars of ethics, which again were used very robustly to support our B Corp submission and were a key part of our successful verification. So that's the Advanced journey, which hopefully gives you a nice rounded picture now of the 3 different organisations and the similarities and differences that we've all gone through. I think it requires me to hand over to Dom now to chair any Q&A and discussion. So I'm going to come off screen share and let everybody see each other.
Thanks, Al. And thanks, Phil and Ed. It's fascinating, isn't it, to see the commonality and the differences of the journeys for 3 very similar businesses, but also different businesses as well. So thank you. I haven't seen any questions come yet in the chat. I'd encourage anyone to add them there or put your hand up if you've got a question. I did have a couple of questions that were submitted to me ahead of, so I'll start off with those and let everyone warm up and add any into the chat or put your hands up. So Phil, if I could start with you first, that'd be great. You mentioned actually a bit about high-risk industries. I think that's a challenge probably for professional services firms, but also for MPA members more generally. Those are businesses that we work with, and just wanted to, if you could just reflect on the challenges you mentioned about how you dealt with having clients that are high-risk industries and how that had to be managed going through the Corp B certification.
Yeah, certainly. So thanks, Dom. There are a couple, the high-risk industries. There's a list of them, and actually they are changing as the Corp standard evolves, which is will also probably bring about some challenge as well. But there's some obvious outliers here. If you're working or are an arms manufacturer, if you work in other industries such as gambling, pornography, some of the very obvious ones, some of them can be quite a hard stop in terms of trying to get to B Corp certifications. However, there's and oil and gas is another one. Oil and gas isn't a showstopper. I think I've just read that the new standard, if you are involved in shale drilling and other parts of energy production, that is a hard stop. But the other areas aren't. What you need to do is then go and provide some evidence of what your engagement is with those industries and what you're trying to do to improve those areas. We internally have had this quite long-running debate about B Corp. It's a force for good. It's about improving the planet. Well, surely we need to be able to go in and help work with high-risk industries as a team to help improve them and help improve their processes to be better for the planet, because there's a whole area there that's potentially contentious. As I said, the standards are starting to evolve a little bit, and we don't have the full details of that. But there will be some deemed very high risk, and then others that are high risk, but you can then go in and outline what you're doing with them, and that is accepted through disclosure questionnaires. And we had a number of them from working with a nuclear organization and a mining company, and we also, full disclosure, worked for a gambling organization for a little bit of time to ensure that they were promoting gambling in an ethical way, to a way that will stop people bankrupting themselves, and making sure there's checks and balances are going in place. We helped a little bit on that bit pre-B Corp, so we had to talk about that and highlight it. But again, it's a bit of a challenging one, and one to really sort of look in depth about.
Great, thank you, Phil. Well, sorry, Al, do you have an add to that?
Yeah, I just want to chip in on that one and reinforce what Phil said. So we have a client their client is a mining company internationally, and we had to do exactly the same, and did have that conversation with ourselves and with B Corp about what that meant for us. I think that the general ethical question that B Corp really forces you to have, which to be fair we should all be having anyway, is it better to be on the inside influencing ethically from within, or to be on the outside throwing rocks and keeping yourself clean? Well, I think, if we're going to influence change, then we have to be on the inside, but upholding the standards and ethics that, for example, B Corp, forces us to.
That's great. Thank you. Ed, anything else to add? Or I've got another.
No, I think that's been covered very well.
Cool. So, Al, maybe could start with you. Just there was also a question about what's the most complex part of the process for a small SME business in completing your certification?
Yeah, I think that I said the most complex, but the most challenging bit was to take what we said we were doing when we had these meetings and our management meetings and our reviews, and actually look at, well, where is that evidence? And I think that even for the bigger, small organisations, if you like, that could be a challenge. But we try to operate in an agile way with managing our governance so it's not becoming a burden. So we did have to really think hard about how we captured that without creating an industry in its own right within the business in terms of the bureaucracy. But I think on reflection, looking at where we are now, I think it has really helped put some structure into our thought processes and our governance as well. So I do see an internal benefit of the B Corp challenge to the governance of an organisation like ours. But undoubtedly, I think that the hardest bit was working out what we needed to write down, how we wrote it down, and how we then demonstrated that with some authenticity, and not just say it's a policy document that we just signed off 6 weeks ago.
Right, thank you. Manon, you got your hand up. Do you have a question?
I do, yes. It's something that Al and I have sort of exchanged emails about over the last few weeks, is this big rollback away and stepping away from ED&I or DE&I, however you want to say it, in the States, to the point of large organisations slashing it from their activities and their operations. So given that B Corp is a US established organisation, are you yet seeing that impacted on the standards? And if you did, what voice do you as signatories to this process have in pushing back against it? Do you have any? I mean, if you were to see the standards cutting out everything to do with equality and diversity, would you be able to push back against that, I suppose is the question.
Shall I take that initially? Yeah. There has been, although we haven't directly been involved with, there has been a significant consultation. And if you go onto the B Lab website, you'll see that there's the details of it. So all B Corp members have had the ability to input into the new standard. And Phil mentioned there's a short video which will flash up at the end if we've got time, which just introduces the idea of the new standards. So there is no doubt that in some ways B Corp in the US so far seems to be pushing against the tide, thankfully, and maintaining that real focus on all aspects of sustainability, and not seeing anything coming out of the draft standards emerging that would suggest that there's any rollback. Although I think probably if the impact was to be felt, it wouldn't necessarily be yet. That's my view. Phil, have you got any thoughts on that?
No, I echo that. I think that they are. I think they deem themselves established enough that they don't need to push back. And just a little bit of insight, my wife is head of D&I for an American-based company that works internationally, and that has caused quite some challenge. And I think, from what I understand, those organisations who are less directly influenced by the US government, shall we say, in that topic, are able to proceed and carry on. And I think if you reflect on the organisations that are B Corp certified in the US, they are probably those sort of types of organisations as well. But yes, it's a tricky one. And I guess the other point to Al around the new standards and the consultation, that has taken about 18 months, and there's been a number of iterations on it. So I would suspect they are going to stick to their guns on this and push that and make sure that is still D&I is still very much included. it will be interesting to see what happens in the future. But I would suspect it's against their mantra, so they will stick with it.
Good.
Interestingly as well, I just add from our perspective, we do quite a bit of work, and Ed was talking about it earlier, in sustainability with our clients. And we were recently engaged with a client, and we were talking about exactly that, the change of the tone in the US, and what that meant. And interestingly, the client was actually very clear. They weren't going to change anything they were doing. They were going to carry on with the strategy they'd set. And their thought process was twofold. One was that they thought Europe may well accelerate further ahead of the US in some ways over time, but they felt actually in their industry that Europe had been behind, so it was probably a chance to kind of accelerate ahead. But also on the other side of it, they think that you might hear a certain message and dialogue from politics, but you might get quite a different reality on the ground for businesses day to day delivering, particularly in certain industries which want to keep to the plans and the objectives that they set to be businesses for good. So anyway, that's just another reflection. Cool. I think I've got another question in the chat. Sorry, I was talking, so not looking. I think there's a question here about, so I think this is sort of about certification more generally, and about things like ISO 9001, 27001, etc. from an environment perspective, and about the resource to do this and the time to do it. Ed, do you want to comment? Because I know you've been quite extensively involved in our audit processes, both for ISO and on the B Corp certification.
Yeah, definitely. So you're right, there is a lot of work around preparing for B Corp certification, but a lot of this work overlaps with your ISO certification preparations, and also your EcoVadis or other sustainability certifications. So I talked a little bit about doing a kind of gap analysis, and I'd encourage you to consider, as part of that gap analysis, which actions or gaps can we close that overlap multiple different areas, and therefore quick wins. So for example, policies and management systems, we know that's weighted very highly as part of B Corp. It's weighted very highly in EcoVadis, and clearly it directly supports your ISO certifications. So you can prioritize on that basis. I think you're right that a lot of organizations don't have dedicated resources for managing these disclosures and certifications, and that's true for Moorhouse as well. I'm a consultant, but I support with the Responsible Business Squad when I've got time. I think the critical thing there is just being very organized and having a plan that people can see what the ongoing and planned actions are, who's owning those actions, and if someone doesn't have capacity to deliver on those planned actions, then someone else can pick up, and the handover process is very easy. It's just about being organized and structured, I think.
Bill, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I'll just echo a little bit more. So I have that dual hat of responsibility, just the same as Ed. Half the time of my week I'm delivering to a client, and the other half I look after B Corp and our ISO standards, Cyber Essentials, etc. So for a company that's 75 in size, I'm going to estimate it was about 200 to 300 days across 2 years looking at B Corp standard at a really rough finger in the air. But as Ed says, it's the things you do in B Corp will actually benefit 9001. Sometimes a tiny bit of 27001 as well, but actually it's all part of, it links together into our business management system. So it does benefit across a broad brush in terms of the way we operate. But yeah, it's definitely not one to take completely on its own. Definitely look to integrate it into the other standards, and you'll see there's some definite positives as a result of that.
Right. Al, anything to add?
Yeah, I'd say just the scale of it, as I mentioned earlier on, the core team of 6, which it was the core team that very much drove the B Corp thing, I wouldn't say it was something that really distracted us from our core business. And that's probably the reason why it took us a full year to get from starting the journey to our submission, because we wanted to make sure we're doing it in a managed way. I reiterate what I said before. It's actually now it's in place. I don't think it's really driving any over and above from what we probably should have been doing. So I'd say that's where it's given us real benefit. And yes, it is there is time. I'm trying to avoid use the word overhead, because it's not really an overhead. It's part of our core way of working, but it does take time. But those are all the right things to be doing. And just going back on a little bit on Manon's previous question as well, I've just pulled up the current draft standard, which has just increased the number of impact areas from the 5 and just giving them a little bit more granularity. So, for example, justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion is now an impact area in its own right. Which interesting enough has the title Jedi. So they ask you for your Jedi actions, which I think is brilliant. Human rights is now an impact area in its own right. So I think to answer your question, again obliquely, man, I don't see there's any pushback at all to support the current US government methods. I'd say if anything, B Corp is pushing more in the opposite direction.
Right, thanks, Al. And I think just to add, I think there's a question here about sort of I think about it. Not interested in the badge so much as the knowing that we're doing the right thing. I think there's a lot of points covered already on it, but I just emphasize. Interestingly, I reflected on at Moorhouse as we went through some of our audits and assessments a couple of years ago. We reflected on the good work we were doing to review with our clients the outcomes and achievements we'd done, but not looking at that so closely internally. And we actually introduced an employee satisfaction survey and an ENPS, an employee NPS score within the business from that process. So I think sometimes if you embrace the audit and the assessment processes, the certification processes, sometimes they can also bring that continuous improvement as well. If you embrace them rather than trying to tick the box, you embrace them for what they're meant to be. I think you can really come up with improvements in the way that you can run your business in a better way. That's just one further reflection from me. I don't know, anything else, Al, Phil, or Ed, to add to that?
Not to add to that.
So I'm just going to back that up again, and through that we've done something very, very similar, and it allowed us to win the Best UK Consultancy from the Best Companies award last year, and it's purely done purely on feedback from the team themselves. So completely anonymous, but it's because of all those actions, as you said, Dom. It's that continuous improvement piece. That was fantastic as well.
No, that's perfect, and that segues into one other sort of final question I had submitted before, which was just around the benefits for it. So, from your perspective, what's the primary benefit of achieving your B Corp certification? I don't know, Ed, if I could just start with yourself, maybe just to give you a reflection from a Moorhouse perspective.
Yeah, I think most important thing for me actually is engaging with our employees and making sure that we're aligned with their values. It also obviously differentiates ourselves from the market, and we know that it's something that our clients care about.
Right, thank you. Al?
I'd say it's twofold. I say the primary driver was to give us the validation for what we thought we were as an ethical, purpose-led business, and to really feel that actually that someone else had told us that was the case. That was the biggest pride that we felt, was very much internal. We haven't seen a direct business benefit of it yet, but I do think that the conversation is changing now, and we are aware of businesses like ours in other sectors in other countries where the time is coming where clients are validating procurement strategies based on have you got certain of these criteria and certain of these qualifications, and I'd expect to see as B Corp gains momentum in the service and the infrastructure and the major project sector that will come, and the fact that we're here and we're prepared for it, I think is going to be good for our business in the future.
Right, Phil, from your perspective, Oakland.
So I think it's that, yeah, it is that sort of third party recognition of that standard of where what we've achieved in that regard. Are we having any direct client business benefit in that regard? I think we're starting to see a little bit, actually. A number of, public sector, there's always a social value question, for example, obviously, as we all know. But actually more and more so, other companies are quite interested in that and what you're doing around ESG, etc. And when you do actually highlight that you're B Corp certified, ears do prick up. And yeah, certainly it's probably more it's not contextual in terms of pound signs, but you can just see that they're starting to gain that momentum. And it's probably worth also saying, the number of B Corp companies is a large number, but that's only representative of about 1% of countries in the world, companies across the world. So it's still in its sort of semi-infancy, but you can see that growth starting to expand as well. So it's only going to be a positive thing.
Right.
Yeah, Tom, can I just come back on that one? Phil's just reminded me of something, the way we submitted a bid recently for a public sector organisation, and one of the questions was effectively on social value and stewardship. And the feedback we got was we scored full on that question, full points on that question. The comment was, "You're B Corp, so you got full points." Was pretty much the response we got.
Right. Good to know. I think that concludes. I haven't seen any more questions, and I think that concludes the questions I got submitted. So I think I'll wrap up there on the Q&A. Thank you very much. And Al, I think I'll just hand it back over to you because I think we've got a short.
Yeah, just a couple. Yeah, just a short video, just to sort of really put that future standards in context, and then I'll hand back to Manon to close. So bear with me while I just get the screen shared again. Thank you very much. Over to you, Manon.
Thank you very much. So those of you who are still here, I think we lost a few along the way, but those who are still here, do please join me in saying thank you very much to Al and Phil and Ed and Dom for a really eye-opening presentation, which we will share on the website and publicise to our members whilst we're still in B Corp month, because I really do think this could fundamentally make some difference. And Al, you said in your introduction, that there is value of trying to go down this route and encouraging more major projects organisations to do this. And I would agree with that. I think, fundamentally, major projects should be businesses that are a force for good. And so that aligns really well with the ideology of the B Corp process. So thank you very much for sharing that. Just to reiterate, we'll put the slides available on the website.
Already up.
We'll share the Oh, they're already up. That is Sasha.
As of about 2 minutes ago.
Well done, Sasha. Many thanks for that. Thanks again. Brilliant session. Look forward to seeing you all again soon.